the flyer. It was nice.
Yes, it was well done. Yep. There they are.
Yep.
Yeah, it's Easter Monday.
Oh, my God.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 10th meeting of the Town of Yarmouth Water Resources Advisory Committee. My name is Spiro Mitrakostas. I'll be chairing the meeting today. First thing I'd like to do is call the roll of the members, see who's present. Lee.
Here.
Rowley. Mary Franklin.
Here.
John DeLiso. Yeah. Ken Smith.
Here.
Tom Durkin.
Here.
Who did I forget? George Perkins.
Here.
Thank you. That is a quorum. I'd like to proceed to the first item on the agenda. We typically start with an update from the town's consultants for the wastewater project that's being planned. Who's up first today, gentlemen?
That would be me, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Lou Ragazzino from Wright Pierce, the owner's project manager. So for the water resource recovery facility, right now we're still waiting on feedback from Mass DEP related to the groundwater discharge permit. They had some comments that CDM Smith is going back and forth in addressing, and that'll really determine what the design capacity of the treatment plant will be, or the capacity of the disposal beds. One of the items that we just submitted a memoranda to Public Works as well as to CDM Smith regarding the TMDL of the Parkers River. So we realized that the current TMDL report does not account for the bridge widening that occurred on Route 28 over the Parkers River. So that's something that we'll want to talk to DEP. SMAS did a hydraulic analysis to show that the nitrogen load could go up as a result of the bridge widening. So that's beneficial to this project. Go down?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
No, I think I was going to say.
The load,
I
the
understand what you
acceptable
mean.
load went down.
I was
We
going
could
to be-
discharge more
Thank you.
nitrogen to the receiving water.
I was going to suggest that you just generally catch the casual participant up with what exactly we're talking about.
Okay. So the total maximum daily load is what's known as a TMDL. It's a report that was done by the Mass Estuaries Program for a number of the water bodies on Cape Cod, and it determines what the maximum amount of nitrogen is that the receiving water can accept. Prior to the bridge being widened, there was a limited amount of nitrogen that could be contributed to the river from the treatment plant or as a result of all the septic systems. So before the bridge was widened, it was determined that approximately 95 to 98% of the watershed of Parkers River, the septic systems had to be removed. By widening the bridge, there's more nitrogen now can go into the receiving water because of the flushing action, the increased flushing. And therefore, that number of homes is reduced to around 65 to 68%. But we're also taking wastewater from other watersheds and bringing them into the Parkers River where the wastewater treatment or the water resource recovery facility will be. So there's kind of a balancing. So as we're looking at the existing TMDL report, we're realizing that still doesn't account for the bridge widening. So we have some recommendations to the town that they should go to Mass DEP, get that report revised. So as part of the permit package, we're all working with the same set of numbers.
All committee members on the same page? Great, go ahead.
Yes.
Regarding the water resource recovery facility design, we received the 60% design submittal on March 22nd. We're in the process of reviewing those plans and specifications, doing a technical review. There is a workshop to be scheduled on that. but we're waiting until after town meeting to schedule that workshop. So it'll probably occur sometime at the end of April, early May. We'll go through our comments with the design engineer, CDM Smith. Regarding the collection system, 2 contracts east of Parker's River have been out to bid now for the last 3 weeks. That's contract 2 was advertised on March 22nd. Contract 3 was advertised on March 29th. Those bids are due. Contract 2 are due tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and the other on Thursday, correct? April 13th at 1 o'clock. So we'll have a sense of, how are the bids coming in relation to the budget or the estimates that were prepared for those prior contracts.
Question, will those be made public tomorrow and the 13th?
It's a public bid opening at 1 o'clock.
Public bid opening.
So
And then we can share the numbers,
read
with
aloud.
the committee, but
Okay.
it's a public bid opening.
Thanks.
My question was, do you know how many bids you're expecting?
We'll know at 1 o'clock when we open the bids.
You don't have an idea if it's 1 or 10? It's
No, I would say it's not going to be 10.
agreed.
Certainly not for contract 2, but I would be surprised if we, didn't get 2 or 3 bids. But it's not going to be much more than that, I don't think. Probably more on contract 3, because it's smaller.
Since you raised the question, what's the difference
In terms of,
between contract 2 and contract 3?
in terms of the size,
Why would one company bid on one but not the
I
other?
think it's more of a limited field of contractors that are eligible. They all have to be pre-qualified by Mass DOT. So because contract 2 has a higher estimated value, the list of contractors that are pre-qualified to bid on projects that size is smaller than the list of is smaller than the list of
Qualifications.
contractors that would be
Yeah.
pre-qualified for a smaller contract. Correct.
Hey, Lou?
Design schedule is on the back of the progress report. We're still on schedule for the design deadlines. We're shooting for resource recovery facility, 90% design to be completed in early August. And then that project is right now tentatively scheduled to go to advertisement in November of this year, hopefully with a early 2024 contract award. Contract 2 and contract 3, as we just mentioned, bids will come in tomorrow. And then after town meeting, once the contracts are awarded, we would anticipate construction would be starting sometime in the fall. That's everything I have for the OPM report, Mr. Chairman.
Anything that the DPW director would like to add before I ask a question?
I think the only thing that I would necessarily add is that this afternoon, the final intended use plan came out, and Yarmouth is still ranked #1 on that program, which is really good news. So I think that's kind of the biggest news, since it's a big part of our program to get 0% loans as well as debt forgiveness, and so we're positioned very well for that.
Excellent.
My question is, at this stage of design, is there likely to, what kind of changes are likely to the design going forward?
Water
Before we get to the
resource
next stage, yeah.
recovery facility specifically?
Pipes are pipes. Plants got moving parts.
At this point, they are through 60% design. The biggest change that could occur if the groundwater discharge permit limits the capacity of the plant. So then we may have to take, right now, it's designed with 4 sequential batch reactor basins. And it may mean having to remove one of those basins. And that's also would be a potential cost savings. So it wouldn't be any additional items to the plant. We're thinking that if the permit limits the amount of discharge, that we might reduce the size of it.
Would would that expedite the search or the move to the alternate discharge site? You know, and what?
Yeah, as part of this,
Answer's yes.
as part of this process, yes. It's apparent that the evaluation and search for additional recharge areas would need to start sooner rather than later, correct?
For subsequent phases.
Correct.
Let's not get folks excited yet. You done, Lou?
That's it. Thank
Questions
you.
from the committee? Lee, anybody? All right, so, Mike, do you have something to report?
Nothing, as usual, Lou steals sort of our thunder, but just a couple of slides. One on the plant, as Lou said, the 60% is in. There'll be a design workshop with Wright Pierce and the town staff to review that submittal and address comments. And then the next milestone is the 90% submittal in August. In terms of the collection system, as Lou said, both contracts are on the street right now. Contract 2 was originally supposed to be opened last Thursday. We made the decision in discussion with town staff to push it to tomorrow to give contractors a little extra time because it is such a large contract to put their bids together. So as of Thursday, we'll have both bid openings for those 2 collection system contracts. And then, as Jeff indicated, and it was just late this afternoon before I could update didn't have a chance to update the presentation, the final IUP did come out this afternoon, so Yarmouth is still the first-ranked project. We're in the process of putting together the SRF application, which is the next step in the process. Now that the list has been finalized, there's a lot of documentation that needs to be submitted on behalf of the town to DEP in order to move the project along. So we're in the process of pulling that together. As Lou had indicated, there is a meeting that's scheduled actually for tomorrow with DEP to have further discussions on the discharge permit. So we hope to get more feedback from them on the remaining issues that they have brought up. And land use controls we've talked about before, that'll be addressed after town meeting. That needs to go before the selectmen for approval. That's all we have.
Who sits in on that DEP meeting?
Be myself, I believe Bob's going to be there, Lori, certainly the CDM Smith team will be there, probably Lou and maybe Mike Giggy is part of that discussion, so that's the general players.
About a half dozen members of staff from DEP as well will be on the call.
And when you say meeting, you're doing this online?
It's a virtual meeting, yes.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Anybody else on that issue? So we're kind of zipping along here. Did you want, it's on your memo, did you want to speak to land use controls, or is that Jeff?
We can. As Mike mentioned, we do need to get that approved as part of the overall application. In fact, when we met with the SRF and Clean Water Trust folks, they've indicated that's essentially our biggest outstanding piece. Everything else is ready to go, and we're lined up again for the 0% financing and debt forgiveness, and we've got a very attractive project. So that's the last piece that we have. I don't think it was in today's packet, but you have received that previously, the draft that is out there that we are looking for support from your committee so we can bring that forward to the Board of Selectmen for their ultimate approval, and that goes in. That is a little different process than we talked about last fall, where it was going to be approved by DEP first and then come to the bodies here in the town of Yarmouth to accept. They've asked that be switched. So that's different than previous process that other communities have gone through, but essentially it's the same document. And what that says is that we will manage to a certain flow. In fact, we're designing the facility, both treatment as well as collection system, to manage to that flow. And that's ultimately at build out for us here in Yarmouth at 3.54 million gallons a day. And that's where the controls come in. It's not unrestricted or unlimited flows that are allowed. Those are the flows that we're allowed to manage. And essentially, this is a, land use controls would be a commitment, if you will, to DEP, that that's the number that we're going to manage to. So that's essentially what we're looking for support for. There's not the detail associated with those land use controls about how that extra flow will be apportioned. Certainly, the flow that properties have today is what they have, and we've based our calculations and design on what current flows are, but there is flow built into each phase of the program, and in each watershed, there's additional flow to be allocated towards business revitalization, or in some cases, maybe additional bedrooms, things like that. Those details need to be worked out still, and we're working on a draft. Our target is to have something for this committee and the Board of Selectmen in the September timeframe with the details associated with that. But that does not need to be part of the SRF application packet. All DEP cares about is that you've got a number that you're managing to, and you're committed to managing to that number.
So town approval refers to the selectmen approving it.
Correct.
It's not going anywhere.
It doesn't need to go to town meeting,
Meeting.
that's correct.
And you'll be exercising the conversation here as well as amongst the administration to get to a document that, once approved, has to also be, at the town level, also has to be approved by the state DEP. Is that correct?
Correct. And the draft that we've presented and been in your packets previously is very consistent with what's been approved by DEP in the past. So we don't have their approval. It's kind of the chicken or the egg type of thing. But we do have a Yarmouth version that's very similar to what other communities have and has been approved by DEP.
Any questions from the committee? We've kind of gotten through the first couple of items on the agenda. This might actually be the third item on the agenda. Are there any additional regulatory issues that you guys wanted to raise?
Not at this point from our standpoint.
I meant to mention at the end of the last meeting, which ran an hour and a half, and you guys were very kind to stay for an hour and a half. We were done early, but please do stay if you can.
Sure.
Questions do come up that might require your expertise. We're moving to item number 4. This has sort of been the $64,000 question, going from plan to town, from plans to do a plant, to a facility, to a collection system, do a project, and then get to a town meeting for approval of the funding that's going to be required to do that. The town has tried very hard to come up with a way to quantify that, enumerate that expense or that cost to the individual users and property owners. They've done a terrific job of coming up with a financing scheme that relies less on taxes than on use fees. But several of the members of the committee wanted to just go over that a little bit more in detail so that we all know what to expect and what we can tell people to expect. So I'm just going to start with the document that we got at the last meeting we saw on the slideshow, which is the flow equivalency table. That's the attachment of that as committee members, for the committee members, as part of our meeting notes for the previous meeting. So as long as we're all understand what we're talking about. In here is the detail that we suggested be made available to the public. I don't know if it's online or not, but at the very least, we have it. And it breaks down the betterment costs to folks who are going to be charged a betterment for the project. I had a really specific question. I want to make sure I'm understanding it as well as everybody else. In this document, we are looking at a breakout column of the value per unit charge for over a 30-year period. Because these betterments, we understand, will be able to be put on a 30-year timetable to be paid at the same time you would be paying your tax bill. So that bigger number of a three-bedroom home betterment fee, which would equal about $15,000, could then be broken down into a yearly or an annual amount. And in breaking down that $15,000, it's been broken down to $510 a month. Excuse me, $510 a year for 30 years. The heading of that column calls that 30%, that 30-year time period at 2% per unit for a factor of 1.02. So I hope I'm not confusing anyone. I'm just reading what's on the page here. That's how you get $500. My question is this. I have a 3-bedroom house. I'm going to get a $15,000 betterment. If I have a 4-bedroom house, I'm going to get a $20,000 betterment. So far, so good. If I were to write a check for that, I'd be writing a check for $15,000. But if I want to put it on my tax bill, it says here I'm going to be paying $510 a month.
A year.
A year, sorry. The $10 difference is that 2% on $500. Are we saying that at 2% charge is incurred individually every year at that $500 charge? Because that's how you get $10.
Well, I think you got to back up just a little bit, and let's talk about the betterment process that the town has adopted, we've adopted one of the state laws, and at the April town meeting, we hope to adopt the second major local option statute with respect to betterments. And if right now, without adopting anything, you go to do a sewer betterment, you have to go a maximum of 20 years, and the interest rate is 5%. So last year, we adopted the local option that allows us to put the betterment over up to 30 years, major. Now, this year's vote will enable the Board of Selectmen to establish an interest rate that is up to 2% over what the town borrows at. Now, the column might have been mislabeled. It's the interest would be up to 2%. So the $500 estimate is if we went ahead with the 0%. If you put the 2% on top, the way it works is you pay the $500, and you'd pay 2% on the remaining balance. So if the town adopted a 2%, you'd start off maybe $620 would be your first payment, and would go down every year. But we don't necessarily think we have to have that 2% on there. And if the numbers that we showed were basically 0% interest, and if the town is able to borrow at 0%, I think what our hope, and we've developed these numbers, is that we could pass along that 0%, because we already have the assessing department, the collectors department, they're funded anyways. So we don't have a big overhead.
Mm-hmm.
So the 2% is an up to number.
I think I'm looking for that clarification, because if that's the case, this column isn't useful, because all it did was break down the value, the betterment, by 30 years, and added 2% on that 1/30th amount. So I applaud the town for wanting to proceed at a 0% interest rate, passing on the 0% interest rate that we anticipate we will be able to borrow the money at. But if there is an interest charge on it, it's going to work similar to a mortgage payment or payment over time. And that $510 number is going to be significantly higher if you're at 1% or 2%, not $510. So if we can have the discussion based on 0%, the town is willing to hold that rate if we get that rate. But I really don't see where this number helps. The number is either 500 or $669 if it's 2%. It's not 510. But that having been said, I'll go with the $500 mark for now. There's a couple of more charges homeowners can expect. One is the connecting fee, or the charges you're going to incur privately to connect to the hookup that you're going to be able to connect to at the street. Our anticipation, generally speaking, is that this will run about $10,000 per household or per property connection, and there's variables in that.
Yeah. A little bit less.
If you were to pay for that directly, it's $10,000, give or take. If you were to finance that through the Aqua Fund, you can get a 0% rate if your household is less than $100,000 income. But at $150,000 income, you're paying 2%. And if you're not a resident, you can still use the fund, but it's 4%. So that $10,000 looks a lot like $333, give or take, without any interest. The caveat is that if you happen to have a property-specific need of a pump, that number doubles, because pumps are generally running about that same amount of money. So 333 becomes 600 and some odd dollars. Added to the first 500, we're now at about $1,000 per household, again, without any interest added at that point. And one thing we kind of keep forgetting is that there's going to be a use fee to this as well. You're going to get a sewer bill because now you're sending it away from your property and the town and this project. You're taking responsibility for treating it. My experience has been, we haven't talked about this, so you guys feel free to chime in here, is that with in other wastewater districts, whether it's Hyannis or Chatham most recently, those bills tend to run about 2 times the amount of the water bill for that property. It's a guesstimate. It's a bench. It's not a real formula. It's just that's our experience, and there might be some nuance in that. But generally speaking, if that's twice what your water bill is, and an average water bill in the town is $250 or $300, you're looking at a sewer bill of about $600, give or take. Again, not bad for sending your septic to someplace else to be treated. But we are planning to add a 25% capital, remind me of the terminology, capital replacement? Surcharge. Capital surcharge. A tax basically on the use of 25%. So that's another $125 or $150 depending on your use. So when you're rounding all these numbers up, we're creeping up over $1,000 to $1,500, maybe to maybe pushing $2,000 for some folks, which is a lot of money if you're compare it to your tax bill and expenses you're not currently incurring. However, the argument we've been making, both as individuals and as a committee when we've gone to these neighborhood meetings, is that there will be certain expenses that you are no longer responsible for now that you're connected to the septic system. You will not have to replace your septic system. That $30,000 charge minimum that most properties have to incur to put in a septic system or replace a septic system will no longer be required. So you can amortize that over the same 30-year period and come out with a $1,000 savings in that regard. And we're not going to be pumping our tanks anymore, which a few of us have discovered recently is running at least $500 a pump every 2 or 3 years. So that tends to bring that $1,500 or $1,750 number back down again to something less than $1,000. So I'm sort of test driving this analysis out there, this math out there to see if I'm getting any disagreement or any pushback. That yeah, we're putting in a very expensive system, but the ultimate cost to a homeowner is reaching maybe slightly more than $1,000 a unit, a house of 3 bedrooms, give or take, if we're not having to put in a pump. Is that fair?
I think that's
Okay.
a great summary, but
That's my take. So I'm going to let the committee, because they expressed an interest in sort of going over these numbers themselves, sort of add or subtract from that.
well, Mr. Chair, if I might, that's a good summary. When you're ready, Lori is prepared to do a little deeper dive into that sewer bill that you referenced with regards to, it is based upon water flow, and she's done some analysis on that. So when you're ready for that piece, she can bring that up and share her screen. Lori Rosella is our water wastewater superintendent.
Sure. John?
I want to applaud everybody involved. When I look back over the last 5 years of participation with the committee from, where we started, which was, the remnants of the 2011 effort, to today, it's a long, long journey. Last Tuesday evening, I sat in this room for the selectmen's meeting with Bob and Jeff, and making the dry run with regard to the warrant articles. I have to tell you, 3 hours and 15 minutes in one of those chairs is a long time for an old guy. I've been giving a lot of thought to this. We're 15 days away from the most consequential vote financially in the town's history. I've participated in all kinds of endeavors in my lifetime. Age doesn't bring all good, but it does teach some things. And the presentation writ large, the understandability from the time somebody walks into the school till the time they leave on the night of the 25th is going to be important. I think if the people who are presenting can think in terms of 3 strata of information. First, to define the problem. Most people know that we have a problem, and there'll be some effort made to, why are we here? So and I don't think we need a lot of time on that. I think the community knowledge is pretty high. I think most people accept the fact that the day has come when the town needs a system. So first, to define the problem. The second part is the proposed solution. So we have the system that our engineers have built, what we're going to do, the pipes in the street, the treatment plant. That needs some time. It doesn't need an hour, it needs some time. You have to kind of think in terms of the cumulative impact. As the hours pass in a town meeting, people get more tired and more tired. And as people get tired, usually their comprehension goes down, not up. So now we get to the really important part, the third part. How are we going to pay for this? What's it going to cost? So the pie chart that we've seen with regard to the cost to the town, that's important. That's the big picture. That's the health of the town finances. The second part of that cost, and that's really where the rubber meets the road, people come in, I think my summation is most people are going to come in favorable, but they're also going to come in with a question. What's this going to cost me, the homeowner? And this is what Spiro's been, focused on here. And I think to the extent that, and I'm not saying anything has been other than first-rate information, but the way in which it's packaged, the old phrase TMI, I don't know how far you go before you have too much information. You need kind of the bell curve. You want to have enough so that people's curiosity and knowledge is satisfied, but you don't want to have so much that they're saying, oh, God, do I have to listen to this for another half an hour? Those 3 parts, the problem, the solution, and then obviously the most important part is how do we pay for it? And so to the extent that however it's going to be presented, the program on this coming Thursday night is the dry run, if you will, And then at the town meeting, I think to see that as a comprehensive package, that's my thought and my take on what's about to happen. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Lee, did you want to chime in here? Sorry to catch you off guard.
No, it's okay. I agree. Town meeting is going to be long enough. And I know that our town administrator has been working with this company to tell people in advance, or we've done this marketing program, communication plan, and so forth. And I'm hoping that in the final analysis, this could be boiled down to a reasonable time span, because you're going to lose people after a while. And you may have some people that, maybe they're not up to speed on everything, but we need to put it forward with very compact and concise presentation, and obviously have a lot of the answers in hand. And I think we do have that. So, but it's important. The town meeting itself usually goes a few hours, 3 or 4 hours. And I don't know how complicated the rest of the warrant is. But this one is definitely going to take at least an hour. So,
Lee, you have anything you want to add or subtract from generally the attempt to answer the question of what's this going to cost?
no, I think all you can do really is provide a typical for a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, and it's all based on the units, number of units. I mean, if you have a big house, you're going to pay a lot more money. If you have a small house, you're gonna pay a small amount or an average amount, and there's not much more you can say about that. I think it's tough to be able to say, well, here's a range, because right away everybody says, well, where am I fitting in on this range? So all you can do really is present a typical model and say, this is about what it's going to be. Long term, if you think about it in terms of the 30 years, the money in the beginning is a lot, and as you work your way through it, it diminishes its value, because if you're paying the same amount every year for 30 years. So, but this is what we're going to need to do. And the nice thing about this, of course, is it's not on the taxpayers. So somewhere down the line, everybody's going to be getting this benefit of the sewer, and hopefully it's going to solve the issue. And there's no better answer that I can see. So I think just being able to explain this in a very concise way, not the way I'm talking right now for sure, but is all we can do.
Thanks, Lee. Any other committee members?
Yes, I want to say I agree with what has been said. I think that there certainly should be emphasis on the Aqua Fund and the other possibility for loans, because I think that the individual homeowner cost is going to become a big issue. I think that we do have pretty much support for what we're doing, but it does come down to the personal part, which is how much am I going to have to pay for this? So I think that, yes, using an average, I don't know what the average income in this town is. Does anybody know? I know we have some very expensive properties and probably some high income people, but I know we also have a lot of retired folks that are on an income that doesn't change. But I do think that the personal cost is going to be a big sticking point for the people who aren't as committed to the project and how important it is from the big picture standpoint.
Tom?
Yeah, I agree completely with the gentleman that has spoken so far. And it brings to mind that this is an educational effort that we are undertaking here. And explanatory graphics are extremely important to concentrate the recipient's attention, so to speak. There are educational consultants who are available. There are public relations people who are available to assist us in the design of the format that we're going to present. And I think that's critical. The people who are expert in certain areas from the administration have a very definite and sometimes narrow perception. And we need this global perception to get the people in town all together and all behind us. Educate them well. Thank you.
George?
Mary asked what median, what evidence of income that would be assessed.
Well, since it's your turn, we wanted to get you on the record. You can let us know if you know.
I'm just going to answer Mary's question. Yep. So the median income in Yarmouth for 2021, apparently the last number we have, is in the $45,000 range. That's per capita. And median income is, I'm not quite sure what to make of why that's so different, but what I've got here is 78,000. But these numbers should be available.
Thank you.
We've been through the census.
Just as a general comment, the Cape Cod Commission does a really good job of breaking out that information. If you just want to go to their website and click on the Yarmouth information, it'll break it out. Generally speaking, we're at about $30,000 per person who works. Two-person household makes 60. Most folks in that three-bedroom category are going to qualify for 0% interest from the Aqua Fund. That's
Good.
Where we're going.
Great. Thank you.
These things tend to sort of increase in lockstep. If you have a bigger house, you have more bedrooms, you probably have more income, you're probably going to have to pay more in interest charges, you're probably going to have a longer driveway, you're going to have bigger connection costs. I mean, we're here primarily to worry about folks who might find this difficult to afford, and I think the town has made a yeoman's effort to make sure that it's within reach of almost every property in town. Ken?
Spiro, I think everyone said, nothing more can be said by me that hasn't been said already, so.
So this comes under the heading of speak now or forever hold your peace.
I'm forever holding my peace.
So you got your chance.
I did.
If I can continue along this vein just for a couple more minutes. This question really is for the town manager who's really become an expert on the financing. The allocation model that we've been working with, these sources of funds are being dedicated for the duration of this 30-year period. So am I correct in saying that unless these individual sources also increase, that this money will not be available for future phases?
Well, first of all, the future phases, remember that we've front-loaded a lot of the financing here to fund the wastewater treatment facility, which is for the first 3 phases. So a lot of the overhead in here is to handle the wastewater treatment facility for the first 3 phases. So that part is going to be committed And to that, phase 2 and 3, we need to add the costs of the distribution system. So obviously, you can't spend the same money twice. However, we've been, I think, pretty conservative on some of the estimates, but when we get past phase 4, which will be 15 to 20 years from now, it will require a new financing plan that derives revenue from some of these sources. So
in general, the $200 million price tag here, 30 million of it we're looking to get from betterments. The remainder, just doing simple math, $170 million, give or take, is coming from other funding sources. Those will have been earmarked, for lack of a better term, or allocated. So they're not going to be available for future phases. But the trade-off is they're paying for the plant that all the phases, the first few phases are going to be relying on. So you don't have to go back and find that kind of financing again for future for future phases. The phases 2 and 3 and beyond are going to be looking primarily at betterments to pay for that work, but the price tags will be significantly less because we've already put the facility in place by that point.
that's right. So
The reason I ask is because we're sort of going to town meeting with a plan that says if you're a 3-bedroom house, you're looking at a $15,000 betterment. There's very few people who are going to be at town meeting who are in phase 1 who have a 3-bedroom house. A lot of people are going to be at this meeting have 3-bedroom houses in future phases. And we're making the implication that that number is going to hold for them. Generally speaking, I'd like to hold ourselves to that standard going forward so that there isn't disproportionate costs in future phases to the same 3-bedroom homeowners. But along the lines of the questioning earlier, the commenting earlier, you don't want to go to town meeting and have somebody stand up and say, hey, I'm in the future phase, this is still $15,000 for me, and we don't have an answer. There isn't a really good answer.
Well,
but
obviously, I mean, look at the value of your house now and the value of your house 20 years ago. You can't freeze time, and a dollar, maybe proportionally, but, the project's going to escalate, values are going to escalate, the dollar is going to be worth a difference. So you can't quote someone a dollar amount for a phase 15 years down the road. So, and I don't believe by implication you're telling people in future phases, this is phase 1, we've costed out that we know this is what the cost is. And so what we're prepared to talk about, proportionally, we can try to keep we're setting a model now that we hope to use for phases all the way down the line. But in terms of phase 1 cost, those are the hard numbers. And the numbers that will cost individual property owners that we're prepared to talk about is we've got the betterments over 30 years. We've got the connection costs that we're going to calculate on an annual basis based on Aquafund funding, and we have the wastewater bill. Those 3. And I would point out that, you mentioned the cost of replacing a septic system. Please keep in mind that the DEP regulations will provide that people will be required to install the innovative alternative nitrogen removal septic systems, and those are significantly more than $30,000 each. So what costs individual property owners will face in the future, we think will escalate even a lot higher than our costs. So, don't try to put us in a position that we're standing up at town meeting and making promises about what the economy is going to be in 15 years. I don't think that's the way to go.
No.
I think that, what we need to show is that we've worked collectively as a community to identify all of these various funding sources that will enable us to start this treatment. Because I think what we're losing sight of when, we just focus on, well, I'm going to have a wastewater bill of it's going to be $600, How can you ask me to pay $600 for a wastewater bill? We're losing sight of the fact that the water quality in our community has been seriously degraded. And we have some threats that may even extend to the water supply wells that we have. Just measuring the nitrate levels that, the emerging contaminant, other levels. If we get hung up, right, on whether it's going to be $500 or $600 15 years from now, I think we're a little bit missing the point of what's happening in the community. So, I mean, I think it's critically important to have the questions answered and answered clearly on what is this betterment cost going to be? How much is it going to cost me to connect to this system? What's my wastewater bill going to be? Those are the three individual main costs. So people need to know that going in. But it gets a little bit, I think, slightly over the top if you start talking about phases that are 10 years or more down the line. So I don't want to be in a position that we're either promising or not promising, or you get in a position, what do you mean you don't know how much it's going to cost me in 15 years? That's just an unfair question. So we want to kind of be clear is that based on the information that we have today, that we've been able to put together collective resources that save money. I mean, this is a very costly system, right? But the idea that you're not going to have to put in what is today a $50,000 system. Next year it might be 60, 65. You're not going to have to do any more of the pumping. I mean, those are some of the things that people are facing. So sometimes if you just focus only on one part of it, people try to say, oh no, that's transparency, but it gets misleading if you don't keep the discussion kind of in the context. And I like the idea of, we've been working to put together a program that defines the problem, talks about the solution, what other possible solutions are out there, and then talks about the cost in a way that people can sort of get it. I disagree that this is hours and hours of discussion at town meeting, maybe answering any questions that people have, but you don't want to get into a presentation if you have the situation that nobody knows what you're talking about by the time we get to April 25, you might as well just go home. And it's one of the reasons why we're trying to get the information out there a little bit more in the public so that at least people understand what the town is facing. I mean, this is a very serious sort of situation that if we're incapable of getting this environmental remediation going, I shudder to think what the next generation is going to be faced with for costs. If you think, it's expensive now, so those are just a couple of observations.
Thanks, Bob. If we've had enough of this topic, can we move to communications?
Mr. Chair, I think, certain one of the intents of this article was to talk a little bit about that sewer bill, and Lori has some information that she can cover pretty quickly, but I think it's very important to get out.
Oh, that'd be great. Are we ready to present?
Absolutely. Lori, do you want to share your screen?
Can we just have John ask his question?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I think there'll be a number of people in the room who'll be interested in a timeline. When will it reach me? So to the extent that we could share a projected end date for phase 1 and perhaps accelerating phase 2, 3, 4, et cetera. So just to give people some hope that it's on the way.
So this is, are you going to walk us through this? Or
Lori Rosella is on Zoom. She can walk you
there
through
you
this.
go.
Yeah. She's sharing her screen at this time.
Hello. Hopefully you guys can see my screen right now. It's just showing the water department rates at the moment. I just wanted to kind of remind everyone what our current rate structure is for water, because basically we're using the same structure, at least for now, for the sewer. So our water rate is based on a quarterly meter fee of, most of you probably pay $26 for a small meter, going up from there. And then you pay a per 1,000 gallon rate. And right now the low rate is $2.07 for the first 25,000 gallons. And the next block is 50,000 gallons. So that's from 25 to 75, and then over 75 is the third block. So moving into the sewer, we followed that same structure, and we're looking at, hopefully you can see my Excel sheet now. Yes.
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 Okay. Same idea. And rather than, it wouldn't be called a meter charge, it would just be a base charge on the sewer side. We would have, these are the fees. So rather than the $26 that you have for water, you'd have a $40 fee for sewer quarterly. And then in addition, you'd have your usage per gallon, per 1,000 gallons, sorry. So this is at $4.50. Going back to the water, we're at $2.07. So it's a little more than double the water rate, and then but the actual quarterly fee is a little less than double. So using these rates, we looked at how that would impact customers. And we did do all this we did do a overview based on the 2022 water usage. So that's where we're getting some of these numbers. So those rates that I just showed you, you can plug in the red here, the meter size and the total volume of water used per year. So if someone's using about 15,000 gallons per quarter, equally, their bill would be, with the capital charge, $430. Something that might be a little more typical, the state uses a water standard of 65 gallons per capita per day, so per person per day. So if you think of a family of 4 using 65 gallons per person per day, that's about 23,000 gallons per quarter. And I just threw in a 20% increase on the summer quarter for potential additional, usage there. Although I can see that, oh yeah, we're good. That is different, just tricked me. So that family of 4 their total charge, including the capital charge, would be about $750 annually. And using the 2022 water data, sorry, my thing's in the way here. It's out of my way. Come over here. This is a summary of just the average water use per business type, and then residential. So the average quarterly charge would be $116 per quarter, which if you just multiply that by 4, you get your total annual charge of about $582. And that's just using the way we bill. It's looking at each bill. So that's using all the bills from, the winter ones where nobody's, where there's people that are not using any water, to the summer where they're watering a lot potentially. We're using a lot of water. So one other thing I pulled a few customers out just to get an idea of the impact on those customers. So these first 2 customers are just typical residential customers. I would think this one is probably a low user, maybe 2 people, and their total bill is $453 a year using their 2022 water usage. This customer is probably more like that family of 4 using $715. Pulled up Captain Parker's pub water usage. Their sewer bill would be around $8,700. Olympia Fish House, just another restaurant, $600. A motel, the Cape Sands Inn, which is around the average size of bedrooms or beds, hotel rooms in all of our hotels, be $13,000. And then the Mariner Resort, which is bigger, is around $24,000 a year for their sewer bill. Some of this is because they have larger meters and there's a larger base fee for larger meters. So I just wanted to run that by you and see if you had any questions at this point.
Wow. Would you mind sharing that with the committee? Or I should ask if Jeff can just pass that around so we have the same,
We can
have
email
the
it.
detail. But you just translated for some of us what we were looking at in the equivalency, flow equivalency chart or table into real examples. Rather than us doing the math, you did the math for us. And you and I kind of came out of the same place. I was looking at about a $750 residential usage fee, including the surcharge for, you call it a family of 4, we call it 3 or 4 bedroom house.
Yeah.
But some of these are, I mean, we're here trying to protect the interests of everyone, but primarily the folks who are most susceptible to this type of change. And we're calling them residents, we're calling them homeowners, we're calling them 3-bedroom dwellers, whatever we're calling them. But there's some real significant costs to be borne here by the commercial properties, if no other place, but in the usage bills as well. Those are some pretty hefty numbers. But it is what it is.
Strictly flow-based, so.
I'm hopeful that the business community is looking at these themselves to see what to expect when the time.
Right. One of the things I would add is a flow-based model. If you use less water, your bill will be less. So it is a powerful water conservation tool.
Fair enough. Questions on the presentation?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just, Mr. Chair, I'll just jump in a second on the hotel side. After running hotels in the town for many years, I will say that, the couple examples I used, although the numbers seem large, I ran seasonal hotels for 25-plus years, and the cost of running a traditional septic systems in town and pumping them down every fall and getting them ready for the next season, those numbers are not far out of line of what I was spending just to keep septic systems going on an annual basis. So although they're large, don't get me wrong, they don't shock me, so.
Well, you've got replacement capital costs for a new
That's right.
system.
That's
You've got
right.
to work that in.
So there's your testimonial. Thanks, Ken.
I don't think they needed one.
And to Bob's point earlier, these are reasonable, especially by comparison to what the state might require us to be doing in the alternative. We're well ahead of the curve on this issue. I'm not sure there are other towns that are at this level of preparation and are virtually at the starting line, ready to go. So for everyone involved, I think it's good work. Getting this information together was one thing, getting folks to the meeting to deliberate on it is another. There's an effort going on with the group that the town administrator is organized to make sure that happens. And with that, there was some information that was sent out this past week that we would have received. Is everyone familiar with these pieces from what we affectionately call the Communications Committee, explaining the project? And more importantly than that piece and its accompaniment brochure, which is being made available in lots of different locations. I got this at the South Yarmouth Post Office. We are planning to host a public information meeting on Thursday, April 13th at 6 p.m. at this Yarmouth Senior Center for anyone who would like to come and at least receive information about the project, and we'll have an opportunity to ask questions as well. Do you want to amplify that, Bob?
Yeah, just a couple of points about the communication program, because we've worked very hard, obviously, on the design of this, system. It's a very sophisticated system, and all the amount of hours that were spent on the financing, those are critically important, but, we're very concerned that with the complication of this type of an effort, that it really is not the type of an issue that you have the luxury of just sitting back and doing nothing and wait till we get to town meeting and we're going to educate people on this issue. What this required is a level of public outreach and collaboration with the community that is far in advance of anything really that we've done on a project that we've worked on here before. We just felt that waiting till town meeting to explain these issues to everyone is too late, that people need to have this information in advance. So, we've worked very hard to design information for the sole reason of putting it in the hands of folks so they can have this information. How much is it going to cost me? Why are we doing this? What is the game plan? And such that people can ask questions. And we've had a lot of feedback, a lot of questions. We're a little bit, caught short with the level of newspaper coverage in our community. I mean, and the Cape in general, it's a major problem. So what all of our communication efforts have been designed to try to overcome that lack of news and to try to put the information in the households so people can ask questions, people can come to town meeting with questions, and that can be prepared to vote on this. Whether you vote yes or vote no, it's just critically important that you understand the issue enough so that you're ready to make a decision, because the fallback position for us, if people don't have enough information at this town meeting to make a decision, it is going to be a very costly delay for every single household in our community. So we've almost spent more time on trying to get this information into folks' hands, than we have developing it. And I know, some people are of the opinion that, oh, you shouldn't use funds to send a mailer out, that's a waste of money. But in this particular case, we think without doing that we're putting the town in a tremendous jeopardy. So we've had mailings go out to every household in the community. And in fact, our team has worked very hard to make sure that information contained enough of the detail so that people can at least come up with additional questions, understand the game plan. And I do want to point out too, I hope everyone can come on this Thursday, the 13th. We have the public forum. It's going to be at 6 p.m. and it's at the Senior Center. And we're also going to be televising that. We've had a couple of meetings with the Board of Selectmen that are being televised. We also got together and produced internally a video program that has a good deal of information. That is coming out now on social media and the town's website. And I really want to acknowledge Jeff Colby. He and I, in addition to the public presentations we've made in front of some of the key groups in town and the forum that we have, we've also reached out, and it's not, the most comfortable thing to do, but we're looking at all of the media, maybe 4 or 5 independent different radio programs. We were on this last Sunday morning. I hope folks heard us on the Spectrum show with Leo Kokonis. That was Jeff and I outreaching them ourselves, taking the information that we presented and, going out there. We're going to be next Tuesday on the Ed Lambert show. And I'd ask you all to call in to the show and register some friendly comments. In all sincerity, I think that would be particularly helpful.
When's that, Bob?
That's going to be 9 a.m. On Tuesday, April 18th. So a week from tomorrow. And tomorrow at 2, we're also recording another for the Cape Cod Broadcasting. We're going to do another show on radio just to try to get the information out to people. We've had a real good team that's using social media, that's using the pamphlets, that we're using the town's cable system. We're using, trying to push people. We had a massive effort on updating and making more comprehensive the website for wastewater. We're trying to push people to go on that website and get the information. So I think, there's kind of a chance that some people, we're working with the whole population. Some people will be annoyed by how much information that is coming at them. And we might hear a little of that at town meeting. But I just want to say is that we respect that, and we do apologize to the people that are getting too much information. But our key goal is, as I said before, we want to try to avoid people coming to town meetings saying, okay, what's this all about? I haven't even heard of this. That to us is not what we're looking for. What we're trying to do is have people understand it first, come to town meeting, express their opinions, but have some information going in, because it's too big of a thing to hit people with. And that's what we don't want to do. And we've been working on this for a long time, and we just don't want to hit people cold. So please don't be annoyed with the efforts. We're trying to hit as broad a base as we can, and just get the information out. The type of information that you were bringing up, what's this going to cost me? Why are we doing it? And that's sort of, in a nutshell, what we've been working on. And I really thank the folks that have worked on that team. You know, they've met every week for months and months and put all this material together.
Can you use the two reader boards in town, the one at the chamber and the one at the high school, and just drive them to the website?
Yes. And that is, it's time, I think it's coming up like the end of this week or something.
Start using
For
that.
the first 2 weeks, last 2 weeks before town meeting, we're going to be hammering those boards, trying to
Right.
push people to the website. And if you're watching this on TV, just go to the town's website, yarmouth.ma.us, click wastewater, and it's got frequently asked questions. It's got a lot of the financial details. It's got a lot of information. And then if you still have questions, call me up. Call me up on the telephone. Send me an email, rrittenhour@yarmouth.ma.us, and we'll try to get as much information out as we can. But like I say, it's never perfect. Some people won't hear anything. Some people will be totally annoyed. But somewhere in there is a middle ground.
Thank you, Bob.
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
Lee.
if I could, I'd just like to ask a question to Bob. Have we tried to get some of the commercial establishments to come to the town meeting and in support of this program, especially the ones along Route 28? Have we done any of that, like the chamber or?
Yeah, I want to tell you, first of all, I think that the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce deserves a little acknowledgement right here, that they have been stalwart participants in our communication program from the start. In fact, we hold our meetings up at the Chamber of Commerce. We've met with many business organizations, and we have some of the business leaders in the community that are on the communications team. And yes, we will have business people that are at the town meeting. We don't want to make this, though, totally about the businesses. And the businesses are kind of concerned about that this is something that impacts all of us in the community. And a lot of the business owners aren't local residents, but many are. And folks that are local residents and business owners, some of the key people in town, as well as the chamber, have been actively participating in all of our public forums, and we'll be at town meeting. But again, we want to make it clear, we think this will be a good benefit for the business community, and it's clear that the business community is underwriting a lot of this expense for local residents. Between the tourism funds that we have going in here and the business funds that we have going in here, that's the reason that this is not on the tax rate. That's the reason. So the business community has been engaged. They're supportive. Some folks will be at town meeting, but again, and the communication team was strong about this, the business leaders in town. They don't want to be singled out as the reason for this project, because the reason for this project is the environmental health of the waterways in the community that impacts us all. So, yeah, but they participated, and I think that the business community really deserves a good show of respect for just their efforts.
If we can go forward.
One last question, if I may.
Sure, by all means.
Do we have an idea in phase one, how many residents are going to be served? And of those, can we expect a lot of them to show up at the town meeting? Percentage-wise, you know?
I have some numbers on that. The We have approximately 19,500 or so registered voters in the community of Yarmouth. 0.5% showed up at a recent town meeting. 1.8% showed up at another town meeting. So it's a very limited representation of the town that votes on these things.
Okay, so if you have, let's say you have 500 people show up at the town meeting, of those, could we figure out that maybe 100 of them are going to be from phase one?
I think you can't predict those sort of things, Lee, but I think more to your point, we were looking at less than 1,000 hookups in phase one, correct?
Yeah, I think as far as physical stub connections, there's about
And-
648, 650, something in that neighborhood.
Right.
But there could be multiple customers on a connection, obviously, condos, apartments, things like
Right,
that.
so there's one variable in there, but we were looking at very small number of residential year-round hookups. In other words, people who would be able to participate in town meeting. And then to extrapolate that over the whole town, you're looking at a very small percentage of people who are going to be directly affected by phase one, who are going to be at this meeting. Not to mention the fact that most business owners are not residents of the town of Yarmouth. One point that Bob may have brought up at another time, but didn't bring up just now, they are actively involved in letting their employees know that they are hopeful for this process to be successful, because it'll be good for their business as well as the town. And it is in fact those employees that may show up at the meeting because they're residents of the town of Yarmouth as opposed to the business owners. So, to put it in political terms, we have no idea who's going to show up at the polls on Tuesday.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
Sorry, who's up?
It's Tom Nicanello.
Mr. Nicanello, you
Yes, thank you very much. May I
getting
speak?
handsomer by the meeting.
Nice smile.
Go right ahead.
Yes, well, thank you very much, and thank you all for your passion and love for our community. As you know, we're generations behind, and I think we're closer now ever before to right the wrong that we've all done. With that being said, phase one, which is probably and it is, in my mind, the most important part, it's going to take care of every neighborhood as the plant is developed. Phase one is the corridor of businesses and some residents, and then down South Sea, you have a lot of residents going around the loop and then picking up on the shore, which is a lot of flush over there, which is most important. But, I do a lot of work. I've been a licensed contractor in the state for over 30 years, and I do a lot of work down that side of our town. And a lot of those people, believe it or not, are babying their septic systems because they don't want a raised backyard. We have very small lots over in that part of town, 10,000 or less. And when you do a new septic system and maybe a new alternative septic system, you're going to have a whole dynamic of a yard to look at. I know just recently I was doing an estimate for a homeowner there, and I was telling him about the sewer, and he had some bits and pieces of information, but I told him that, hooking on to sewer, you're not going to have a raised backyard. And the look in his face was absolutely beautiful, because he was thrilled that his little house will now be able to stay the same, and he'll be able to enjoy that little piece of heaven he bought here on Cape Cod. There's a lot of people in West Yarmouth, phase one, and Old Main Street that have these tiny little lots. And I think it's a crucial sales point in your phase one, or, contract 2 or 3, that hooking up to a sewer is better for everybody involved in the environment, but it also allows you to maintain what you bought. You're not going to lose your backyard, raising it up 4 feet, putting a wall around it, and then have to suffer. So I think that's extremely important. Our community, as you know, lives right on top of the water. 35 feet down from my feet is the water table where I live. So, you know, to have that sewer and have that waste go out and not ruin my yard, to me, and the people I talk to really appreciate that. So I think that's understated. I also watched the selectmen's meeting the other night for 3 hours on the comfort of my chair at home, which was very comfortable. And I just wanted to point out that there was a new citizen, new resident, maybe about a year old, came to our town, and she was very positive. She asked some questions, and there was a question she asked that went unanswered. So I think it's extremely important that those questions, and the question was about the septic treatment plant we have now, why can't we use that? Now, in my line of field, I know why we can't use that. But I think it's important that we all share, maybe the DPW director can tell us, that we all have the same answer on why that facility doesn't work on what we're planning to do. There was another comment I'd like to make about the meeting. Mr. Scott, as you know, the assistant town administrator, has done a yeoman's job, as they say here in Cape Cod, about his work. And he had some illustrations regarding the diff. And as Tom mentioned, illustrations are key. So if I'm looking at an illustration of an old motel with a septic tank, and then on the same page next to it, I look at a brand new motel with a sewer system. Now, to me, I know that the new stuff is what the tax is going to get based on to go to the diff, not the old one. What Mr. Scott has there is good. There's a bunch of arrows that go around a circle, but I think a little bit more on just a basic illustration of old and new is going to get the example to the point. And I think my last comment, and I'll leave you, is as Spiros was saying, the chairman earlier, about the costs compared to your septic system now and the sewer. As the town administrator pointed out, your future septic systems costs are not going to be anywhere near they are today. You're going to have the monitors. You're going to still have to replace every 20, 30 years the base around your field. I mean, all we do in the innovative system is add pieces in there to take out the nitrogen. The rest of the solids and everything is still going to have to be maintained in the future. It's not like one septic system for a lifetime. That doesn't happen. So to me, the cost of the sewer is a lot less than your future cost, which you don't know what's going to be, to have a new, not just a piece put in, but the maintenance on it down the road. So I think there's a lot of information there. We still haven't figured out what's going to be really, but you know, the collection system to me is we're way overboard. And again, thank you all for your hard work, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Mr. Nicanello. If you guys don't mind, we'll move along. We don't have the Friends of the Bass River in the house, so we're going to move past that. I'd like to go to future meetings. If we were going to meet again before town meeting, it would be the 24th. That would be the day before the town meeting. It has on occasion been the town's prerogative, the selectmen's prerogative, to meet on that same date. So before I ask the question, does anyone want to meet on the 24th? Is it likely, Bob, that the selectmen are going to meet on the 24th? Because the town meeting's on the 25th?
No, they're going to meet the 25th, not the 24th.
Okay, so it is open if, and the next thing I was going to suggest is, as opposed to us having a meeting 2 weeks from now that updates the project and look at our progress, is there going to be should that be the opportunity to look at the information from the bids that would have come in? In other words, is it useful to have a public meeting of this committee as the forum by which we get to have that conversation, as well as whatever else may come up as regular business? So I'm kind of offering it as an opportunity to do more than just meet as the Water Resources Committee.
Mr. Chair, I guess I'd be inclined to, if we're gonna meet, I mean, I just honestly just, let's see how the 25th goes, then we meet after that, in all candor.
Anyone else? I mean, is there a point to being here to talk about all of it, particularly? Just remind me, if there's a bid opening between now and then, and it's a public information, what is likely to be the information from that we're bringing to town meeting? Useful, not useful?
Well, we're going to do some analysis of that information, the two contracts. There's a total of 6 contracts altogether, and we'll have bids for 2 of those contracts. We'll take that information to show the definitive kind of locked-in cost, if you will, of those 2 contracts, and then relate that to the other 3 contracts that have collection system components that are similar, to make sure that our estimates are refined as much as we can in advance of town meeting. The bottom line is it won't change the number that we're asking for or the article at town meeting. So from a very high level, it won't change, but it's very important for us from a kind of a design standpoint, making sure that we're capturing all the costs appropriately.
So if it is valuable information, would you like the opportunity to present it publicly on the 24th at this meeting?
I don't know that that's going to make too much of a difference. I mean, certainly that'll be presented at the 25th with the slide about cost. At this point, not knowing, what those numbers are until tomorrow and Thursday, it's tough to say whether that'll be a key element or not. But it's certainly a part of that, overall presentation.
Absent that, do you need us to meet on the 24th?
I don't think there would be
The consultants need to meet us to meet on the 24th?
I don't think so.
Bob, do you feel like being here on the 24th?
No, I think we'll be kind of focused on getting ready for the 25th.
Right. If there was a purpose that you could use this committee for, I'd be more than welcome to make it available, but since that's not the case, does the committee want to meet on the 24th? So we'll regroup after the town meeting. Lee?
So,
Gary?
hey, Sparrow?
Yeah.
If I could just chime in here, maybe we should not meet on the 24th and save our energy for the town meeting, but maybe Jeff can send out the results of the bid opening and maybe some of the analysis to us board members to have an idea in advance.
Lee is suggesting that whatever analysis you've done on the bids that came in might be made available to us by email. I'm sure you're preparing something for the 25th, if you can clue us in.
Absolutely. We can certainly share the bid results. We do a tab sheet for all the bids. That's very, very easy. We share that publicly with anybody that asks. That's why it's, public information. There's a component that we need to then react to with regards to a contingency and construction phase services that we're working with the design team on to refine those numbers as well. And that'll all be part of that slide that shares the cost at town meeting. So as soon as that's available, we'll share that. That takes a little bit of work, and that's why we're doing it as early as we are, giving ourselves approximately 2 weeks to have a really refined piece of information for town meeting. But as soon as that's available, we'll certainly share that. But the bid opening results are available immediately after the bids are open.
Will your projections be available to the selectmen when they meet on the 25th?
Well, absolutely. We'll have a refined presentation. They'll see that well in advance of, they meet essentially the hour before town meeting, and we'll have it, well before that.
Jeff, the projections are, essentially, we're not going to know anything more. You're just going to say, is what we discovered on that date either way below than what we intended or way above, and therefore we've got to reconsider. Otherwise, we're going with the estimates we've got right now, right?
We're going with the overall
Yeah,
number that we have, which is
I mean, we're not gonna worry much.
207,244,000. That's the number that's printed in the warrant. That's the number we're going with.
Basically, we become more confident in the analysis that we've done.
That's a good way to
That's
put
all
it.
it's gonna do for us.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's a confidence, right?
So we're not meeting on the 24th. Our new schedule has us meeting on the second Monday of the month next. Guys can wait till then?
Yes.
What I might say about the second Monday is I think that is May the 8th. One of the challenges we had to get this room on this meeting is also the Housing Committee meets that same date
We were
and
just
time.
dodging
So
the Health Committee.
if we could avoid their meetings, that would be great. They're already committed for May 8th as well as June 12th for this room. If you want to meet somewhere else, if that's helpful, but if you like this space, that's
Well,
going
just
to
to-
be a challenge.
Just to make sure we're in the same place. We're not meeting on May 1st. Typically, Board of Health meets first Monday. We're not meeting on the third Monday. That's also Board of Health. So we're migrating to the second Monday, which is now in conflict. This room is in conflict with. But aside from the room, we should try to keep to a regular schedule, second and fourth Mondays, if we can. Even if we're
The
upstairs.
fourth Monday is not a conflict for this room and this space, but the second Monday is. That's what I'm pointing out.
Yeah, that would just push us 5 weeks. So I'm not sure we want to wait 5 weeks.
Folks don't like meeting at the DPW?
No, I'm keen on meeting at the DPW on the 8th.
Okay, I mean, that's, no conflicts there.
Sure.
But this room is very popular.
So was the DPW building, so.
Right.
That concludes the agenda items. Anything else the board, committee members would like to?
Excuse me, as I understand it, we're meeting on May 8th at the DPW, and we're meeting, what's the second?
If need be. I mean, you know, we doubled up on our meetings to address the information that was coming at us prior to town meeting. If it's a pleasure, you guys want to get together again 2 weeks later, we can do that, but you might want to wait till the 8th to decide if you want to get together again on the 22nd.
So we will wait till we receive something on the,
And I'm saying if we get to the meeting on the 8th and you want to meet again in 2 weeks, we can go to the 22nd of May. I'm just saying, I'm not putting it in the book yet.
okay. Well, we'll be informed through the email.
I mean, there'll be lots of fun stuff to go over on the 8th, I'm sure, including town meeting results.
And before you adjourn, I just wanted to, say a quick word about our annual town meeting that's coming up. Certainly, we're here to present all of the information that we possibly can, and we do have a ton of really great information. What I notice a lot at the town meetings, where we've had a panel like this that has worked so hard for so long at riding shotgun on every detail of this complex project. There's no one in town that knows the project like you folks. And quite sincerely, I think the residents of the town know that. And I think that the most powerful voices that we have in town for our town meeting are sitting around this table and on this Zoom meeting right now. I think folks want to hear from you. They want to know that, look, you've studied this issue, you've asked all the hard questions, and this is something that you guys have worked on and you're recommending it. And even just a few short words indicating that, you've worked on this project and you have confidence in it, people look toward their fellow residents and the people that live in town, and they trust you and they want to hear from you. So I would encourage you to stand up at town meeting, and even if you make a few short comments, just indicate to folks that, this project didn't fall into our laps from outer space, that, we've been at it for a long time, and it's something that the town should do. People want to hear that, Don't sound reticent don't be scared to talk. I think we need to stand up and let people know that, yes, it's expensive, but we've reached the time that, I just fear if people get mixed messages, and they don't take the right vote, that's the last thing I want to do is come back in 10 years with, $400 million. And the environment all screwed up, so.
You mean the fall meeting for $100 million? Fair enough. Thank you, Bob. Yeah, we didn't get a chance to encourage one another to attend town meeting and/or speak. I don't think we are committing to any specific talking points, but since you've been on this committee for as long as you have, you pretty much know what you want to say at this point. So, is it the pleasure of the board they want to look at the minutes from last meeting for approval? Does everyone have them? I know
Yes.
You've seen them, Mary?
Yes, I have. Thank you.
So just to make sure that we stay up to date on these and that they can be released, should we take a vote on them? Any motions?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as printed in the packet.
Second?
Second.
So George is seconding, and only folks who were actually at the meeting can vote. I'll take that vote. Mary?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
George? Ken?
Aye.
And myself, aye. A motion to adjourn, if that's your pleasure.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Lee?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
George? John?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Thank you very much for attending today.
Good meeting, Sparrow.